Discovered Dad had a second family after seeing a familiar face at school and realizing the guy I'd been sitting next to for years was actually my brother from another life he'd been hiding forever. I used to think I had a reasonably ordinary existence. Not great, but comfortable. My father was a taciturn man, dependable, unflappable. The sort of fellow who never took a day off work, never lost his cool, and never really talked about his past. I thought he was just one of those men who carried the weight of the world upon his shoulders without seeking help from anyone. My mom was softer, more emotive with her feelings, and I could tell by a look what kind of mood she was in. With my dad, though, it was always superficial. I loved him, of course, but there was something about our relationship that always felt filtered. He'd come home at the same time each evening, with a lingering smell of diesel and metal from the job. We'd have dinner together, maybe talk about school or sports. He'd ask me how my grades were coming along, if I was staying out of trouble. The kind of basic questions any father would ask. And then he'd simply disappear into the living room or the garage, tinkering with his tools or napping in front of the TV. He wasn't cruel. He was just remote. There was nothing within my childhood to indicate a secret. No strange late-night phone calls. No kidnappings. No lies that I could find. He wasn't overly demonstrative, but he wasn't absent either. He was in that subdued, shadowy space between here and not here. And I had learned to accept it. I thought that was the kind of man that he was, reserved, solid, quiet. Until I learned the truth. And the truth did not come crashing down like it does in films. No film noir-style admission, no fight, no enigmatic long-lost ally showing up at the doorstep. It started with something as ordinary, and as innocuous-looking, as a school group project. Junior year. My history teacher paired us randomly by project on a semester-long research paper. One of the guys in my grade was a guy I'd seen at school for years. We'd had some classes together before. Sat together at assemblies. Nodded to each other in the halls. We weren't buddies, man, but we knew who the other was. Relaxed enough to talk without it being awkward. Always figured that we kind of looked like each other, but I attributed it to coincidence. Dark hair. Same nose shape. Same height. Honestly, it wasn't that odd looking. Plenty of people were similar. His name didn't ring a bell. It didn't share the same last name as mine, so I didn't even give it a second thought. But when we started working more closely together, when we worked together in between school a few times to work on our project, that was when I started paying attention to things that made me feel uneasy. It wasn't just the fact that we sort of looked alike. It was the tone. The tone in which he spoke. The way he expressed himself. The way he used his hands when he was talking about something. The way he wrinkled his nose when he was trying to think. Everything seemed so familiar, like I was watching a reflection of something I ought to have known but had forgotten. After class one afternoon, we were in the library, and I pulled out a photo of my dad that I had used on another project. It was a quick snap of him standing in front of his old pickup truck, smiling awkwardly at the camera. My group member glanced at it and hesitated in his tracks. He didn't say anything at first, just stared. Then he asked, "Hey, where was that taken?" I shrugged. "Backyard. Couple years back." He looked at the photo in distaste. "Your dad looks kinda like my uncle." Strange. I didn't pay any mind. Everyone was always noticing parallels. I rolled my eyes, joked about it, and we moved on. But something stuck with me that night. Some invisible pull at my brain. I started wondering, not because I was suspicious, but because the curiosity had planted itself. And curiosity is prone to plant itself in your brain whether you want it to or not. The next week, my team went to his residence to work. I'd never been there before. It was in a neighborhood not far from my own, a part of town I never went to. When I walked in, I had this weird sensation washed over me. A kind of déjà vu, like I'd been there before even though I hadn't. The house smelled of citrus and old leather. There was a painting on the wall, and I noticed one thing in particular as we walked down the hall. It was a man, same height as my dad, same hairline, same goofy half-grin. He was younger in the photograph, but no question. My breath stopped. "Who's that?" I said, trying to sound casual. He glanced over. "That's my dad." I stared at the photo for a really long time, blood thumping in my head so loudly that I couldn't hear anything at all except for the pounding. "That's your dad?" "Uh-huh. He doesn't live with us anymore, though. Travels around a lot. Long distance. Doesn't stay around much." My stomach clenched. I forced on a weak smile and nodded, trying to act like it didn't matter. But inside of me, my whole world was already starting to change. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at the picture. I kept going back to the little things. The way we looked similar, the way we walked, the way he reacted to my dad's photo. It didn't add up. Or maybe it added up too well. I didn't want to believe. I kept telling myself I was paranoid, that I was seeing too much into it. But I couldn't shake the feeling. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I waited until my dad was asleep, snoring softly in the recliner, and I snuck into his garage. I knew he kept old files there, receipts, documents, tax documents. He was the kind of man who saved every document he ever signed. I dug through boxes, my hands shaking, my chest pounding. I felt like I was breaking into a building where I didn't belong. And I found it. A folder full of stapled together papers, child support declarations, letters. Some were old, yellowed. Some were recent ones. And the name, his name. My group member. The boy I'd gone to school with since grade school. The boy I sat next to in chemistry class. The boy who laughed like me, had my eyes, had my blood. I couldn't catch my breath. My legs went weak. I sat on that cold garage floor, papers trembling in my hands, reading and reading the words, hoping I had misread. But I hadn't. My dad had a second family. And my half-brother had been living with me the whole time. I don't even know how long I just sat there. Maybe an hour. Maybe longer. I was numb. As if someone had taken out my insides and replaced them with ice. I couldn't help but think about every single moment I'd had with my dad. Every birthday. Every school play. Every softball game he'd skipped because he'd worked late. I was wondering which of those nights he was actually with them. I thought of my mother. How she was always tired. How she would look at him from time to time when she was certain I wasn't paying attention, not mad, necessarily, but defeated. Like she had conditioned herself not to breathe. And I remembered him, my half-brother. This kid who perhaps didn't know either. Or possibly he did. Possibly he knew it all and kept quiet. Perhaps we'd both been misled differently. Or perhaps I was the only fool in the dark. I didn't go at my dad right away. I couldn't. I didn't even know where to begin. How do you ask your father why he created two families and lied to both of them? How do you even begin that conversation? Instead, I carried the burden in silence. 4 days. Then a week. I would not sleep. Would not eat. My mom asked if I was stressed out about school. I nodded and said yes. She believed it. I think she wanted to believe that one. But I finally lost my cool one night. We were having dinner at the table, and my dad mentioned responsibility, that individuals must always bear responsibility for what they do. I couldn't cope. I slammed my fork down on the plate, so hard the plates rattled. "Really?" I said. "You want to hear me talk about responsibility?" He glanced up, appearing taken aback. "What are you talking about?" And then, in that moment, the words just poured out. "All this time, I thought you worked late. I thought you were just tired. I thought you were just quiet. But you were not tired. You were not quiet. You were living another life. You had another family. And you lied to us? Every single day. Silence. It was the kind of silence that tightens around your throat like a noose, suffocating and strangling. My mother's face paled. My father said not a word. He simply sat, staring with eyes wide open, mouth half open, as if I'd hit him with a hammer. I stood up. My chair scraped the floor. My heart pounded so hard that I could hear it inside my ears. "Do you realize how fucked up that is?" I whispered. "Do you even care what that did to me?" He simply did not utter anything. Stared at the table as if it would save him. I withdrew from the room before I said something I could not take back. I didn't come back down the stairs that night. I stayed in my bedroom, sitting on the floor with my back against the door, just in case someone was going to attempt to come talk to me. But no one attempted to. My dad. My mom. Nothing. It was like my words had shattered something open that none of us knew how to deal with. And quite frankly, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted next. Part of me wished he would yell going up the stairs. Part of me wished he would cry. But above all, I just wished he would own it. To meet my eye and say, "Yes, I did. I lied. I kept things secret. I betrayed all of you." I needed it out in the open, because keeping it inside without any confession felt like being gaslit by silence. The next morning, he was gone. No word. No note. Just gone. His truck wasn't in the driveway. His toothbrush wasn't on the counter. But his clothes were still there, however. So I knew he wasn't walking out the door for good. Just skirting. My mom hardly gave me a look as she poured coffee. Her hands were shaking. "Do you want to talk about it?" I asked. She didn't meet my eyes. Not now. But with that, it was all said. She knew. Possibly not all, but something. Enough to feel the weight of my words. Enough to keep from being shocked. Later that day, I went back to school like everything was normal. But it wasn't. I couldn't focus. I kept watching him, my half-brother, from afar. Each movement, each gesture, made me remember the secret I had uncovered. The resemblance seemed so much more apparent now. It was like having a pair of glasses on and for the first time seeing the world in focus. I couldn't help but question. Did he know? Was he just a more skilled actor than I was? At lunch, I ate by myself, which was not unusual. I wasn't uncool or anything, but I wasn't the kind of girl who needed a crowd of people around her all day long. I liked being alone. But that day, alone was suffocating. It was like I was going to burst from not speaking. So I did something dumb. I walked over to his table. He looked up at me, shocked. "Hey, what's up?" I sat down across from him. "May I ask you something?" He paused, then nodded slowly. "Sure. Does your dad live around here?" He furrowed his brow. Sometimes. He's in the area once or twice a month. Usually weekends. Do you have any idea where he works? Not really. He doesn't talk about it. Does he ever say anything about me? As soon as I'd said the words, I wished I hadn't. I sounded mad. But he didn't laugh. He just sat there for what felt like forever, then slowly slumped back. "What are you saying?" I swallowed. I think we have the same dad." His mouth opened in shock. His face didn't change, no denial, no amazement. Just quiet. Then he leaned in close and whispered, "I know." That shook me more than anything else. "You knew?" I said, my voice trembling. "This whole time?" "I didn't know for sure," he said quietly. "But my mom informed me a few years back. Told me he had another wife. Told me he had a son my age, same school." I pieced it together. "I saw the picture in your binder, the way he looks, and I knew. I couldn't believe it. All this time he knew. He knew and didn't say anything. He let me sit with him. Talk to him. Make jokes with him. without knowing that I was talking to my brother. Why didn't you tell me? He stared at his tray. What was I going to say? Hi, I believe we share the same father. Pass the stapler? He didn't even want to be right. I glanced at him. I had so many things I wanted to yell. So many things I wanted to blame. But looking at his face, I saw it. The same hurt, the same confusion, the same betrayal. And then I wasn't angry anymore. I felt a queasy sort of solidarity. He was like me. In the midst of someone else's lie. Found some papers. I whispered. Child support letters. Letters. He nodded. My mom does too. She saved everything. We were silent for a while. Two brothers who hadn't asked to be brothers. Who hadn't asked to have been born into a secret. I hate him. I breathed. Me too, he said. But even as we said that, I think we both knew it wasn't quite so black and white. Hate's a powerful word. And confusing. Especially when it's aimed at someone who used to tuck you into bed at night, even begrudgingly. After school, I came home straight away. My dad's truck was in the driveway once more. My heart started racing the instant I saw it. I'd nearly gone the other way. But I couldn't hide from it forever. This was my home too. My life. I was owed some questions. He was in the garage when I walked in pretending to work on something that didn't require it. He gazed at me, then back at the wrench in his hand. You want to speak now? I asked. He shook his head. I thought you need time. No, I said. You needed time. You needed space. You needed to keep your distance from me. Let's not pretend about this. He wiped his hands on a rag and leaned against the workbench. I didn't anticipate this, he said. That's the best you can come up with. He looked at me, and for the first time in a very long time, I saw something real in his eyes. Regret. Guilt. Even shame. I was young when I met his mother, he said. We weren't careful. It wasn't meant to happen. But it did. And I tried to do the right thing. I sent money. I stayed in touch enough not to feel like a complete monster. But I never wanted two families. I just didn't know how to make it better without blowing everything apart. You mean you didn't want to get caught? He did not deny it. I thought my whole life you were just quiet, I told him. Just tired. But you were not tired. You were torn in two. He shut his eyes. I did not know how to be whole. I did not know if I was to pity him or scream at him. I deserved the truth, I said to him. We all did. Him and me. You don't get to decide what pieces of you we get. I was scared, he admitted. So were we. The silence between us. Heavy. Bitter. Real. He finally broke it. I'll tell your mom everything. She already knows, doesn't she? He nodded. Some of it. My fists clenched into fists. You destroyed all of us. I know. I left. Not because I didn't want to hear more, but because I couldn't. My head was full. My chest hurt. My whole body throbbed with anger and sorrow and something I hadn't yet been able to give a name. I stayed awake that night again. I just looked at the ceiling and thought about how delicate it is. How someone can build a life with you, smile for your birthday party, help you with your homework and keep whole things of themselves a secret. I told it all to my mom the next day. She sat there, quietly, her hands in her lap folded, her eyes a long way off. I knew, she said. Not at first. But as the years passed, things didn't add up. Phone calls. Excuses. He'd take off for holidays occasionally. I asked him questions. He lied to me. After a while, I stopped asking. Why didn't you leave? She blinked slowly. Because I didn't want to hurt you. I looked at her. He already had. She reached out and placed her hand on mine. I know, sweetheart. And I'm sorry, I was mad at her. But I couldn't be. She'd been carrying this pain longer than I had. Borne it. Hidden it. Tried to keep it from me. I realized then that we were all not so innocent after all. That we were all just somehow managing to get along in a house that was built on secrets. The following days were like walking through the ruins of something that I had previously believed in. My house remained the same. My room was my room. My mum continued to make her tea the same way every day. But everything felt superficial, like someone had dimmed the volume on everything that was familiar. I started to notice ghosts around each corner, not actual ghosts, but emotional apparitions. Flashbacks of birthday parties, Sunday dinners, peaceful evenings spent in front of the TV, all tinged now with the knowledge that something had always been off. Or worse, something else had always been waiting there. I did not talk to my dad after that garage conversation. He stayed in the house, moving quietly, as if he was trying not to exist. My mom barely spoke to him. Their talk was brief, staccato. They never uttered the word divorce, but the tension between them lingered like smoke. I had no idea whether I hoped they would break up or get back together. I had no idea what getting back together even was anymore. School was just as strange. I started avoiding him, my half-brother. Not out of anger now, but out of confusion. The truth had created this invisible wall between us. We had something now that was bigger than the two of us, and neither of us knew how to carry it. One day, though, he just waited for me after class. Stood there by my locker, holding his backpack like it was 1,000 pounds. "Can we talk?" he asked. I looked around. The hallway was clearing out. I nodded. We stepped outside, to the edge of the football field where no one ever tended to hang out after school. He sat down on the bleachers, and I sat down beside him, keeping a bit of a gap between us. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "Me neither." He nodded. "It's weird, right? Knowing we're brothers. But also, strangers." I stared out at the field, the grass gleaming gold in the fading light of afternoon. "Yeah. It's like I've always known you, and not at all." He leaned his elbows on his knees. "I wondered about you. My mom wouldn't tell me anything about your mom. She said it wasn't her business. But she said you were smart. Quiet. That your dad talked about you sometimes." I jumped back in surprise. "He talked about me?" "Yeah. Not much. Just little things. Such as you were good at writing. You didn't like crowds. That you had your mom's patience." I didn't know how to react to that. The fact that my dad was giving pieces of me to another family. It left me feeling exposed. Violated, almost. But yet a tiny part of me, the lonely part, wondered if perhaps he did care. Just not the way he was supposed to. "What about you?" I asked. Was he with you?" He shrugged. "Sometimes. He'd come for a weekend, take me to the movies, buy me shoes. He tried to be the fun dad. But he never stayed. And he never told me why. I used to think maybe I wasn't good enough to be the one he wanted. That hit me like a punch to the chest. "Don't say that," I said to him. "It's true," he replied. "But I know now he didn't choose us at all. He just split himself." We sat in silence once more. The wind stirred the trees behind us. A car passed by in the distance. In the field somewhere, a sprinkler came to life. "Do you think we're friends now?" he asked. I gave a small laugh, not that it was funny, but the most natural sound to make. "I don't know. I don't think there's a rule book for this sort of thing." He focused on me with his eyes, and for the first time, I actually gazed back at him. Not as a schoolmate. Not even a half-brother. Just someone who had been broken the same way I was. "I'm not mad at you," I said to him. "I was. At first. But you didn't do this. Neither did you." We hadn't made any promises that day. We hadn't hugged or cried or vowed to be close. But we stayed there a little longer. And that was enough. For the moment. When I got back home that night, the lights in the living room were off. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a steaming cup of tea she had not touched. "Can I sit?" I asked. She nodded. I sat down in the chair across from her. She seemed exhausted. As if all those years of silently suffering had caught up with her. "I talked to him," I said. "At school." She didn't respond, but I did catch something flicker in her eyes. Relief, maybe. Or worry. "I think he's as lost as I am." My mom leaned over the table and grasped my hand. "You have the right to be angry," she said to me. "You have the right to feel whatever you have to feel. But don't let his shortcomings make you hard. You get to choose what type of man you become." I nodded begrudgingly. "I just don't want to be like him." "You won't," she said. "Because you already care about hurting people. That alone sets you apart." I felt it for the first time, like maybe I could breathe again. My dad asked to talk to me that weekend. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. We sat outside on the back porch, as the sun turned orange and purple. He was heavier than I recalled. Not in years exactly, but in weight. As if guilt had been an added burden that time hadn't touched. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he began. "You don't," I said. "Even." Steadily. He nodded. "I don't hope for it. But I have to tell you I'm sorry. Not just for lying. But for being such a coward that I couldn't even own up to it sooner." I didn't say anything. I allowed him to sit there in the silence. "I love you," he said. "I always have. But I was weak. I thought I could compartmentalize all of it. I thought if I gave enough to each side, it would work. But love isn't a transaction. And I know that now." I glared at him. "You didn't just break trust. You broke identity. I don't even know who I am anymore." He nodded, his voice taut. "I know. And I'll live with that." The thing was, I never actually forgave him. Not at the time. Maybe not ever entirely. But I appreciated that he didn't anticipate that I would. He just sat there, with all the devastation he had wrought, and didn't attempt to run away from it this time. That was something. Then, one day, at last, he went away. Quietly. Respectfully. He didn't fight. He didn't beg. He just packed up his bags and left. My mom didn't cry. Neither did I. We just started over. It's been some time now. Much has changed, but some things have not. I still see my half-brother at school. We talk every now and then. We've even spent time together a time or two. It's still strange. Still awkward. But we're making an effort. He came to my graduation. My dad didn't. He did send a card, however. Sent a letter in it. I haven't read it yet. It's still in the drawer beside my bed. Perhaps someday. Perhaps not. I guess what I've realized is that sometimes the people supposed to protect you will hurt you more than anyone else. And healing is not a straight thing. It's a slow, winding journey. Full of steps forward and steps back. Full of days when the pain feels fresh again. But it does get quieter. And in that silence you come to define yourself, not by who raised you, or who deceived you, or who left, but by who you decide to become in the wake. Senior year came in and around in no time. I thought that after everything that had happened, the secrets, the betrayal, the drama, I'd feel older. Wiser. Harder. But really, all I felt was tired. Like the kind that doesn't go away after a good night's sleep. It was the kind of exhaustion that accumulates in your body when you find out the people you looked up to were as flawed, if not more so, than you had ever imagined. No one in my life knew what had occurred. The majority continued to view me as the reserved, quiet kid who kept to himself. They had no idea that the dude who would occasionally eat lunch with me was my half-brother. They didn't know my dad had slipped out of our lives unnoticed. That I hardly spoke to my mom for weeks because every time we discussed anything it felt like wading through shattered glass. I think that everybody expects you to get better faster than you do. They think that if you're not crying every day, then you're okay. But sometimes grief just doesn't seem loud enough. Sometimes it shows up as silence. Such as sleeping in your bed a little longer than you should. Such as texts going unread. Such as laughing at a joke in the cafeteria and immediately feeling shame because you remembered you were supposed to be furious for 5 seconds. What I did not anticipate, however, was how things between my half-brother and me slowly, and I mean slowly, started to feel less bizarre. We never did sit down and have, "Let's fix this," because there was nothing to fix between us. We weren't the bad guys. We were just the collateral damage. And I think watching that helped us establish a sort of tacit, unspoken bond. We started spending more time together. Not often. But sometimes we'd grab coffee or play some hoops after school. It wasn't fake. It wasn't sappy Hallmark nonsense about two long-lost brothers reunited. It was two people struggling to figure out how to be something to each other without a manual. I respected that. I think he did too. One afternoon, between practices, we were sitting on the curb outside the gym, sweaty and exhausted. He looked over at me and said, "Do you think we would have been friends if all of this hadn't happened?" I didn't have to hesitate. "Yeah. Probably." He nodded. "Same." It meant something. It didn't make everything okay, but it meant something. My relationship with my mom also shifted. We were both carrying different kinds of pain, and it took us some time to learn to talk to each other again. There were nights when I'd come home late, and she'd be sitting on the couch waiting for me. Not to yell at me, but to know that I was okay. I caught her sobbing in the kitchen one evening. She didn't even try to conceal it. She just sat there at the table, tears streaming down her face like she was finally releasing it all, giving herself permission to feel everything she'd kept pent up for years. "I knew," she whispered. "I knew he was cheating. Not at the beginning, but soon enough. I knew. I just couldn't bring myself to see it. I was scared of what it would do to you." I sat beside her and grasped her hand. "You don't have to explain." "I do," she replied, crushing my hand with her own. "Because you were better than that. And I should have fought for it." I shook my head. "You were trying to protect me. I see that now." She cried harder. And I let her. For the first time, I wasn't losing it. I was keeping someone else waiting. The oddest thing about all of this? I started getting my dad after the more space he created between us. Forgiving him. Not excusing him. But comprehending him. The weight he carried, the terror that must have eaten at him each day. He lived a lie for over a decade. That can't be simple even for a man who chose to do so himself. It's a cell you build for yourself. He phoned me every month. Never pushed. Simply left messages. "Hi, just saying hello. Hope school's okay. Call me if you need anything." I never called, but I did listen to each message. All of them. And then, one day, I read the letter he'd wrote for my graduation, the one I'd thrust in a drawer and forgotten about for months. It was 3 pages. Handwritten. His writing wasn't pretty, scratchy, uneven, rushed in places. But it was real. He talked about how he came up with a family that buried everything. Who never lied if it would hurt. Who never showed him how to be vulnerable. He said he always thought being strong was keeping everything inside. About hurting, not telling. And then he wrote, "I didn't mean to break you. But I do know that I did. And if there is anything between us, even a fragment, I will wait for it to grow. No expectations. No pressure. Only hope." That was the last time I had cried in months. For in that moment, I saw how human he was. Hurtfully, wrenchingly human. And I did not want to carry hate any longer. It was too heavy. I did not call him. Not yet. But I did something. I texted him. A few words: I got your letter. I'm not there yet. But maybe someday. He answered promptly. That's all I needed to know. That began something new. Not a reunion. Not a redemption arc. Just space. Space where healing could occur. Eventually, I started piecing myself back together. I applied out of state to college. Not out of fleeing, but out of wanting a do-over. I needed to know who I was outside of this story. Outside of my dad. Outside of any of it. My mom helped pack me. She embraced me a little tighter than usual when I left. My half-brother came by the night before and offered me one of his old hoodies, said it was good luck. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, he told me. I hope you find the same. I replied. And I meant that. Now, weeks later, I'm sitting in my dorm room, writing this down. Not because I want to relive it all, but because I want to recall it honestly. Because sometimes the ones we love will hurt us in ways we can't even conceive. They'll shatter our trust. Recast our stories without permission. But even so, we get to decide how the next part of our story goes. We have no choice in choosing what families we are born into. But we do have a choice in how we come out of the devastation. And maybe that is where real strength begins. College was a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it gave me the room I needed, physical, emotional, mental space. I no longer needed to pass by those same everyday mornings through the same kitchen where the quiet between my parents would yell. I no longer needed to pass by the garage where I had found those papers. I could go weeks, months, without letting my mind rest on what my dad had done. Or so I told myself. But the thing is, once you break someone that deep, it follows you. I'd be in class listening to a lecture on moral philosophy or human behavior, and suddenly I'd think of him. How someone who taught me to tie my shoes, who showed up to some of my games, who sat at the dinner table like everything was fine, could carry two lives with such precision and lie so calmly for years. Sometimes I'd wonder who else in the know. Did his friends know? Did my grandparents know? Was there someone, somewhere, who had shared his secret with him? I'd look around at the people in my life, professors, classmates, even strangers, and I'd catch myself thinking, what secrets are they hiding? What double lives are they leading? That's what betrayal does. It makes you doubt your ability to trust the world. But even with all that baggage, college gave me something I didn't even realize I was lacking: space to find out who I was outside of him. Outside of the guilt. Outside of having to pretend that everything was okay. I got to be a blank slate again. I started writing more about it, not just this story, but everything. My thoughts, my fears, my anger. And I started seeing a therapist at the counseling center at school. I was hesitant at first. I didn't think I needed to. I thought that I could just get over it on my own. But then one morning, after an all-nighter and a bombed midterm, I walked into the counseling office and sat down. The therapist was friendly. Kind. She did not intrude. She just asked, "What brought you here today?" I recall freezing, just staring at the floor for what seemed like forever before I answered. And then I told him. My dad had a second family. And I found out about it in the craziest, messed up way possible. I haven't felt complete since. And suddenly, the dam had broken. I went there every week. I talked. I cried sometimes. I sat quietly at other times. She never rushed me. And slowly, I started to shed all the things I hadn't even realized I'd buried. Like how I'd started to jump a little whenever someone got too close. Or how I'd pull away emotionally the moment someone tried to really get me. Or how I started assuming everyone was lying to me, even when they weren't. "You don't trust yourself," she said one time. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "You don't believe in your own ability to see individuals clearly. Because if your dad could lie to you that long, then everybody can." I bobbed my head, the reality of it searing in my chest. Yeah, that's just exactly it. She did something precious for me. She reminded me that trust must rebuild itself from the inside out. It starts with trusting oneself. Your instincts. Your gut. Your value. One day during my middle semester, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. But I knew the writing the moment I saw it. It was him. Not my father. My half-brother. There was no long letter inside. Just a short one. I hope college is going well. I've been thinking about it a lot. About how weird it is that we had to learn about it the way we did. I started writing music. Nothing heavy. Just guitar work, lyrics. Turns out all this misery has somewhere to go. Anyway, I suppose I just wanted to say, I'm still alive. If you ever want to talk. Or not talk. Just wanted you to know. It surprised me how much it meant. That he'd reached out to me. That he hadn't just disappeared into his own head. I wrote back a week later. Thanks for writing. College is fine. Overwhelming, but fine. I'm happy you're doing music. That's logical, really. You always had that creative edge. I'm not up for heavy chats yet. But I'd like to be in touch. P.S. Let me know if you ever record something. I'd like to hear it. And that started something new between us. Letters, emails, the occasional voice memo. We didn't talk very much about our dad. We didn't need to. What we were making had nothing to do with him. We were choosing to make something else. Something on our terms. And as for my father, he kept phoning. Every other fortnight. His messages grew a little longer. A little more personal. He started sharing things with me, anecdotes about his day, the books he was reading, the podcasts he'd discovered. It felt like he was trying to show me who he really was, now that the charade had given way. I no longer erased the messages. I kept them. Sometimes I'd play one at night. Not out of love, not then, but curiosity. As if to understand the ghost of a living person. At the start of spring term, I went home for a weekend. My mother took me from the station. She was healthier in some way. She was lighter. She had lipstick on again. Listening to old songs she used to hum while cooking. The house was no longer haunted. Something seemed to have been unleashed. We prepared dinner that night, just the two of us. She told me about her new work. Her yoga class. She laughed more in a single day than I had in years. Then she asked quietly, "Have you spoken to him?" "Not really," I said. "Just messages." "Voicemails?" She nodded. "That's fine. You'll know when, or if, you're ready." I stood outside beside the garage for a little while before I went off to go back to school. I looked at the shelves, the workbench, the piles of dusty boxes. The place where everything changed. And I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Peace. Not complete. Not perfect. But something close to it. Because healing isn't about forgetting. It's about being at peace in the pieces. I still don't have a close relationship with my dad. Maybe I never will. But I no longer wake up with that weight on my chest. I no longer move around in shame of his decisions as if they were mine. I've chosen to forgive, not for him, but for me. Because to hold on to that pain was costing me too much. And my half-brother? He wrote me a song the other day. Just him and his guitar, playing something raw and incomplete. It was beautiful in the way that only something hammered into shape through pain can be. I listened to it with my eyes closed. And when it ended, I played it again.